The Daily Mail has been found to have published inaccurate claims about Pakistani men. The judgment was made by the press regulator, but the author of the article in question is unlikely to get an angry call from the Daily Mail's editor. That's because, well, they're the Home Secretary. This is from The Guardian. Suella Braverman falsely claimed child grooming gangs in the UK were almost all Pakistani, according to a ruling by the press regulator IPSO. The Home Secretary made the claim in a Mail on Sunday article published in April, where she singled out British Pakistani men as being involved in child sexual abuse gangs due to, quote, cultural attitudes incompatible with British values, and that have been left mostly unchallenged both within their communities and by wider society. The regulator said Braverman's decision to link the identified ethnic group and a particular form of offending was significantly misleading because the Home Office's own research had concluded offenders were mainly from white backgrounds. Now, that's all incredibly shocking. So a cabinet minister, the Home Secretary, publishes in the Mail on Sunday incredibly sort of inflammatory statements, right? And they weren't true. Now, there is an argument, right, that we should be open and honest with issues, even if it's difficult, even if some people might get offended. We need to be able to speak facts, to say the truth. But if you're saying something which is inflammatory, which could have very negative consequences in terms of how people are stereotyped or how people are seen in society, this can provoke interethnic violence, essentially, right? If you're blaming Pakistani men for grooming. If it's false, right, that's just evil, essentially, right? But writing sort of inflammatory, divisive things that marginalize an ethnic community, which are false, is to have a Home Secretary do that. Appalling, appalling, appalling. It also gets worse, I think, right? This is from The Guardian again. In its defense, the Mail on Sunday argued that prior to publication, it had double-checked Braverman's decision to single out British Pakistanis with advisors to the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Both teams at the top level of government confirmed they had, quote, no concern over this particular line, unquote, and were happy for it to be published. The newspaper also argued it was entitled to rely on factual information provided by the Home Secretary about the ethnicities of grooming gangs because the Home Office was the department responsible for dealing with the issue and Braverman was the most senior member of that department. Now, IPSO did find that defence from the Mail on Sunday reasonable. And the Mail were then found to not have been in breach of regulation because they did do what was normally considered to be due diligence. They did check the article, right? The problem for us is that they checked it with the Home Office, which is the normal thing to do, but the Home Office is even more dishonest than the tabloids, it seems. I mean, Aaron, a cabinet minister being found to have, told an untruth in a mainstream newspaper about ethnic minorities. I mean, it's pretty extraordinary, isn't it?
We're in a desperate situation for the Conservatives. You don't do this when you think that you're on course to win a majority of the next general election. I mean, you make calculated risks, and this doesn't seem like a calculated risk. I think, frankly, the whole strategy around the small boats seems very incalculated, partly because they've made a commitment to stop them coming over here, which, frankly, they can't deliver. And so they've set themselves a bar. They won't reach it. That's just going to mean more lost votes. It's a similar thing with regards to grooming gangs. It's a similar thing with regards to a ton of stuff. Now, for instance, with the ending the war on the driver. What's the objective? At what point does the war end? At what point do you win and guarantee something for your voters? So like I say, Michael, it really speaks to the fact there isn't a strategy right now from the government. There is a series of ad hoc tactics. And so you end up with tactics of just really having no broader narrative to the country. What does Starmer stand for? What does Rishi Sunak stand for? I have no idea. But it also means you make lots of screw ups like this, and you behave in a way that's kind of unprecedented, frankly, for Home Secretary.